Welcome back to our second webinar with Boris. I'm really excited to see you all here and to see Boris here again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Today we are going to move on where we left off last time. And just a quick summary of what we discussed at the previous webinar. So we were talking about how Boris gained his experience in negotiation and why I consider him an expert in this field. We talked about why it is not, why knowing a language is maybe not the, well, not maybe, but definitely not the most important thing in a negotiation, and how we affect the subconscious of a person even without knowing the language so well. Boris said that language is important for storytelling, but not so much for the core of the negotiation. We also talked about how to handle our emotion during stressful negotiations, the most important things to consider or pay attention to during a negotiation, and how to tell if the other side is bluffing. Today, we are going to tackle the rest of the questions that I had prepared for Boris, and some of, well, actually all the questions that you guys sent us during the last webinar and to my email. Of course, if anybody has a question now, feel free to also send it in the chat box, and we can answer them as well. So we can start immediately, I think. Welcome back, Boris, as I already said. Great to have you here again. My first question for today is something that I'm really curious about, although I maybe haven't had such a stressful situation, but I think it's very important to know this. So let's guess that you are in a negotiation and the other side uses unethical tactics, such as intimidation. How do we handle this kind of a negotiation?
Well, so that's basically, again, this other variant of the same question from the last time, which is my first answer to that is, in order to somebody intimidate you, you have to be intimidated. Yes. So again, it's hard. I mean, you have to be trained for this, and you have to train for this like you train martial arts, like you train any other skill in your life. Unfortunately, we never were taught this way. And we never even knew during our kindergarten and primary school, secondary school faculty, even some business faculties, especially in Serbia, they don't teach you negotiation the right way. They don't teach you the effective communication, trust building, trust-based influence. And especially nowhere near, nowhere do they ever teach us how to manage our brains. And that's the first thing. So going back to the question I was answering the last time we spoke, again, if you're in a stressful situation where you're negotiating with somebody or communicating with somebody who is intimidating you, first you have to manage the processes in your brain and realize that he will not physically attack you, or she. And if it comes to that, I'm sorry, but you should have been listening to me many years ago when I was telling people, and I still tell them, train martial arts.
Okay.
Especially if you're a male, it's very, it's such a waste to live your entire life without ever discovering not nearly how you are capable of handling crisis situations, how capable you are of defending yourself or your loved ones, or just what is the physical and mental capacity of your body. So I really believe in that, that old quote, famously Socrates, I think, said it, no citizen has the right to be oblivious of the capacity of the human body and not to train his body and his soul and his mind and so on. So that's the thing. In 99.9% of situations, you will not be physically attacked, but your body responds like you will. So like we said last time, you have a split second, literally 1,000 piece of the second in which your sensors, your eyes, your brain, your nose, your ears pick up the sensation from the other person who is yelling something or saying some words. And then in that split second, your amygdala, your system 1, your fast processing brain alerts you, danger, danger, danger. And before you know it, he serves a heuristical switch, a heuristic question to your prefrontal cortex, and then you formulate a thought based on this amygdala's reaction, and you say to yourself, I'm intimidated, he's trying to intimidate me, he's being this or he's being that, he's attacking me. And then your first emotion is panic, is anger, is fear. And then your first reaction, your first action based on that emotion must be some kind of attack or some kind of withdrawal. But either way, you just, how do you say in English, you just worsen the situation. So you just get the same result even worse. But what you need to do is to train yourself in techniques of managing your brain, managing your breathing. And at the moment that somebody is intimidating you, you realize he's not intimidating you. You are intimidating yourself. How can he intimidate me? I had so many situations, for example, in my consulting project with a big company, Iceberg Salad Center in Serbia. They produce salads for the McDonald's, and they are the largest Serbian producer of vegetables and salads and so on. And I was a consultant there. So they hired me as I created a consulting project, hired some of my former colleagues from Grundfos, and we tried to improve their management processes and production processes top down, from the owner of the company and the executive director to the shop floor. So I'm telling you this because my job there was literally negotiating every day, full day, 6 months. Because imagine a Serbian company that's profitable and is working well for the past 20 years, and the executive director is the classical, Serbenda. He's like 56 years old, very rough, very tough, very loud, and his negotiating style is not what I say trained. He doesn't know what true negotiation is. He just uses his dominance, and most of the time he gets away with it until he comes across somebody who is trained in negotiation, and especially somebody who has trained in negotiation and martial arts. So the second day when I was there, we had a direct clash in the management meeting where I made a mistake. I stepped on his authority. I made a crucial mistake. I've broken the first law of the 48 laws of power, which is one of the necessary books if you want to be effective communicator and negotiator. So rule number 1 in 48 laws of power is do not outshine the king. If you are not the king, if you want to thrive in that environment. So I made a critical mistake on that meeting, and then I could see he's pissed. And there was actually, this was the situation. So I was in Grundfos, trained for many years, and then I developed my own business, and then I came there and I saw that the management meeting, his phone rings and the operator from the shop floor from one of the machines is calling him in panic to solve a problem. And as he hung up, I said, Dragan, are you fucking kidding me? From now on, you should never let anybody let yourself, especially yourself, to to pick up the phone during a management meeting. Why? Because this is the most expensive hour of the company. And blah, blah, blah. Everything I said was true. Everything was said was precise, and he knows it. But that's what I'm telling you about negotiation. You can have all types of arguments and stories, but you will never succeed to transform somebody's mind before you first open them up subconsciously. So I made that mistake. Then I made the second mistake of trying to explain to him. I interrupted him, first mistake. My second day on the job, they're paying me high price, and I'm younger than anybody of them, and they need to listen to me as a consultant how to change themselves and their company. Nobody wants that. They say they want to change, but then they mean oh, you will change my people, not me. And then I was like, no, you will have to change first because it goes top down. So anyway, I know this is a bit long story, but it's important because it's a major example of how to answer this question and all the others basically. So I took a step back, I sat down and I started analyzing for the rest of the meeting his reaction. I realized I made a mistake and he's pissed. And all the other managers, it was like 7 or 8 managers, they're all 40, 50, 60-year-old men, mostly and one woman. And they're in fear of him because he's a classical Serbian entrepreneur, which is a tyrant, because they don't know the other way, you know. I get it. It's this still 90s mentality, and only now with the foreign companies we start learning these proper negotiating leadership techniques. Anyway, I wrote down at the end of the paper, if he calls me to stay at the end of this meeting, I'm right. Because, and remember what I said last time when you asked me, how do you know if somebody's bluffing? You never know. You guess and you test, just like in poker, but you test using proper techniques. But now I realized that I fucked up. So now I was preparing for the continuation of this. And as soon as the meeting was ended, he was like loudly, Boris, you will stay now. I need to talk to you. So he tried to, present himself as an alpha male so that all the other managers see him. And all of the managers step out. And I sit beside him, and he says, and I knew exactly, I swear to you, the first sentence that he will say. And he said it. Listen, with a finger like this going into my face. If you do this one more time, if you challenge me like this in front of all my managers, you're out. You're fucking doomed, you know. And as soon as he did that, and I was smiling like this and looking at him, and this is the major point. So how can he intimidate me? First of all, I realized from all my training in negotiation and communication that this is not gonna be a physical fist fight. And whatever he says, I'm able to curiously wonder why is he saying this. And secondly, I knew that if he tries to jump me, I will fucking break his skull into pieces. I'm not even joking. I will react like that if somebody tries to physically fight me. And this is what I trained for many years in kickboxing and stuff like that. So that gave me the perfect position, this mushotoku, this influential, stable position. And I was just looking at him and smiling. And then I said, Dragan, sorry, I made a mistake. I fucked up. I realized that. But look at what you did just now. You had a chance to be a better man. You had a chance to be a great leader. You had a chance to show to them how great you are, unlike me. And what did you do? You just fucked up upon my fuck up. And now imagine what's happening. And then one of the core techniques is open-ended questions that form their thoughts. So I basically piled upon each other 2 or 3 or 4 open-ended questions. What do you think your managers think about us right now? What do you think is happening behind those doors? Imagine this. I'm the consultant you paid for very highly. They're all anticipating how we will cooperate, what will happen, what will change. And the first meeting, we clash like 2 rams. We both insult in a way each other, and now they're asking whether we're fighting inside, whether I will go tomorrow and then you will fail and I will fail, and what did we achieve? And after several questions like that, I put a crucial label. I told you last time, labeling is one of the core negotiating techniques. And I told him, it seems like you're afraid I undermined your authority. And that just broke him open. It's very interesting what happened. It was a much more influential than I wanted it to be influential, but I didn't realize how deep I struck. Because what happens? Many people that are dominant believe that they have to be dominant. And they're actually in constant pressure, in constant fear. Imagine, so my calmness in that situation enabled me to really be in his shoes and I thought about it. Imagine for a second how stressful it might be to go to work every day and believe that you have to be a tyranny in order to production to work, in order to company to work. It's very hard to handle that kind of pressure every day, each day. And then when I said that and asked those open questions, and first when he saw me smiling and being, communicating, not verbally, but with body language, it's okay, you're safe, we will not fight. Then he toned down and he looked at me and he said, "Oh man, you're right, you don't know how," and then he started talking to me like this classical Serbian leadership story, how his managers are actually bad and how tough it is to, keep leading them. And then he saw in me a friend, somebody who understands, and he started opening up. And then we started finally talking. Then he was ready to talk. Then I went back to the storytelling. And what happened next week on a management meeting blew me away. Literally, I'm having these goosebumps when I imagine this scene, because it worked much better than I even expected to. The meeting started and he said, "First of all, I want to publicly apologize to Boris. He was 100%."
Sorry.
That's exactly how it happened. He said, "I want to publicly apologize to Boris. He was 100% right. And we will not use phones anymore in the management meeting." And then he basically told them everything that I told him, which is true. It's lunacy as executive director to let an operator on the machine call you that machine broke when he has engineers, supervisors, and so on, so on, so on, so on. That's not the way to grow a company. That's not the way to be a leader. And he said all that, and we continued. And then the funniest thing happened. The owner of the company, a woman who is in Serbian they say a woman dragon. She's like, if he's tough, she's like a volcano. And she was not on the first meeting. She was not on the beginning of the second meeting. And as soon as Dragan told that, she stepped in and her phone started ringing. So I had to start all over again tomorrow. But that's the thing. That's the thing that people don't realize. If you want to be an effective communicator, negotiator, leader, you must accept and realize that that is your primary function. To always communicate and negotiate. And you're happy like, "Oh, I won this negotiation." Great, you can be happy for 1 second and then go back to negotiating every day, all day. But as you practice, just like in martial arts, just like in anything, you will get more and more comfortable and you will even seek conflict like I do. Why? Because when you are the person who will seek conflict and solve conflict for others, they will give you whatever you want. So that was a really long-winded answer, but basically it's really, I told you last time, maybe it's worth mentioning again. For especially women, really great podcast that you should listen to is the Life Coach School, is called on YouTube. And she talks a lot about this model. Fact, thought about fact, emotion about the thought, action upon the emotion, and result from that action. And she basically trains you, explains to you for free on YouTube how to manage your brain in all these crisis situations. So that's one way. The other way is to go on some training like my workshop or faculty for crisis management or I don't know, martial arts or some kind of training which will prepare you for how to manage your breathing and your brain during the crisis situation. And that way you will never again believe that somebody has such immense power that he can offend you or intimidate you or enrage you with his words. That's the power you are giving to them because of the thoughts you're creating about those words. Okay, so I'll stop there.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. I think that was really useful, and as I said, it also gave me goosebumps as well at one point. So
I mean, I don't know if somebody listen. because I always get these types of questions, and people it seems like people want me to tell them something like, oh, pinch yourself on the thigh and then you will rewire your brain, or some hack like that. Please guys, if you know any hack that can help you manage your physiology, tell me. I'm all ears, but I never found it. I think it's in much more deep principles.
Yes, I think it's really interesting. I've never, well, I haven't been, exploring negotiation in such a way, but I've never heard anybody talk about negotiation from this standpoint, like from starting from physical and going inside. And I think for me, that was like I have been thinking about what you said since Friday. And I was like, that makes perfect sense. But I've never been able to realize it before. But now when you said it, it's so logical.
And yes, and it's unfortunate and it's crazy how rare it is. For example, this guy that I always mention, Chris Voss, I consider him one of my teachers, even though I didn't met him. But I read his books, I paid and went through his masterclass on negotiating and so on. But when you look at his YouTube videos, it's like 3,000 views. What is 3,000 views globally? So it's a shame that people don't know this, don't learn this, don't train this, because it's literally like the single most important skill you can have in your life. Imagine if you can, like with 60% winning rate, transform people's opinion, influence people. 60% win-lose rate, you will literally create whatever you want. A great business, a great life, a great relationship. And I'm sure we will get back to it. I prepared some books that people can start with.
Yes, we will. We also got one of those questions. But I want to get back to, before we move on with my question, to one thing that you mentioned, and I remember that somebody also asked me that in my email, which I just remembered, but it doesn't matter, about the breathing exercises. Can you give us some short pointers about the breathing exercises? Maybe just, or where to find them, or doesn't have to be, actual exercises right now, but just some pointers on how to master our breathing.
Well, it can be. So how do you usually work with these type of things? Do you leave in chat like a link or something?
Because I can leave a link, yes.
Leave
or you can
links
as well.
Maybe in the chat. So first of all, you have to start training yourself to breathe into your stomach, into your belly, or as my first mentor would say, into your balls. Even though you're a woman, imagine.
Yeah, okay.
But why? Because at the most critical time, you're left without a supple, flexible but ready, sharp, the apparatus for talking. Your mouth, your eyes, your cheeks, your throat, your belly, your diaphragm. This is what is necessary to keep changing the rhythm in the negotiation, to articulate with influence. And this is what I do even when I'm talking to you right now. I get excited about the subject and my breathing goes up into my lungs and I start speaking more from my throat and my lungs, but then I remember and then I go down into my belly a little bit, and now you can hear me much more clearly, and now I communicate with what seems to be much more influence, and now I can even slow down a bit. I can look at the room, I can hear you, I can look at your eyes and be more aware when I'm breathing more deeply. So how do you do that? You can simply put your hands on your stomach. There is this point below your navel button where, or how it's called in English, I'm not sure. Yeah. And this is what they say is a center of energy. So in all the Eastern type knowledge, like my teacher follows, they say it's a center of energy. And whenever you meditate, for example, in Zen meditations, you have to breathe deep into your center, just below your navel button. And also there is Western language that can describe it, and I think it's related to the nervous system and how one of the major nervous centers is right around your navel button. the second largest center of nerves after your brain. So anyway, you just put your hand deep down on your belly. You cannot see it right now, but basically where your navel is. And when you breathe in, you push your hand out. So try to take each breath so that you push your stomach, push your hand with your stomach, and then go up to your lungs. So first inflate your stomach and then your lungs, and repeat that a couple of times. And you breathe out, you breathe as you're saying the letter H in Serbian. So you breathe in into your belly. That way, you center yourself, you ground yourself, you have deeper breathing, you can speak with more confidence, you feel for a split second more confident, and then get back to the verbalization of whatever you were trying to say. So I can also send you maybe one video in chat with these bioenergetic exercises. This is one small part of the famous Osho dynamic meditations. That is what I've been doing for many years now, and it really helps me to prepare before a critical conversation. So I will just find it for a second here.
Or you can just send me later to my email, and I will send it to everybody who was here, if that's easier.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that to not take time from the conversation. Yeah. So just remind me, I will send you the link for these bioenergetic exercises for deeper breathing, for grounding yourself, and also a Zen master, Hyongak Sunim, who actually I had a crazy, I guess it's fate or coincidence to meet twice and hear his lecture and talk to him in person. And he taught me how to practice Zen, basically Zen meditations. And he's a really great character, and he has great talks on YouTube on what is Zen and how to practice Zen meditation, this same type of breathing. So I will send you these couple of links.
Excellent.
It will help you tremendously.
Wonderful. I know that when I went to school for pregnant women, we also did some breathing exercises, and it was very similar to what you just showed us. And I remember when I was having my first baby, because the second one was really fast, but the first one, there was this time where there was a lot of pain. And I didn't really believe something like breathing can help you in labor. I mean, it's breathing. We all do it all the time, right? But it's very different, and it really helped me, stay, like I said, stay grounded, know where I am and know what's happening, and feel in control, at least partially, of what's happening.
It's incredible how powerful the breathing is. I mean, I hope you are all familiar with Wim Hof and Wim Hof method. If you are not, then first thing what you will do after this conversation, go on YouTube and type Wim Hof and start learning, because he's the only one who actually proved in clinical testing how through breathing he can flush out deadly bacteria and viruses that they injected him just through breathing method that he learned also in Tibet, just like my teacher. It's tremendous how much you can achieve through simple Zen practice and meditation, but I'm warning you, just like all great things, it sounds simple, but it's not easy. You have to be disciplined and start doing it. Not theory, not reading books on meditation, but start doing it. Start breathing, start looking deep. And let me tell you one thing, sorry, this has hugely helped me. Literally Zen. I know you think I'm all over the place, or people who are watching me, but trust me, when somebody is yelling at me, through the learning I got from Hyongak Sunim and the Zen approach, I literally, in the critical moment, I imagine that person as just a physical representation of something within. And for a split second, my brain automatically asks, what is it? What is in him? What is it that something that spawns these thoughts, this yelling, this physical appearance? And you literally, at the same moment, become calmer, because you don't even think about the words anymore. You're thinking about much deeper principles, and it just brings you back into your frontal cortex, and now you're already prepared to continue negotiating. So yeah,
Yes.
but it's probably too complex to explain in one talk. Let's
Probably.
go.
Yes,
Let's
but we are
continue.
going to continue. This is great, and thank you. I will send everybody the link that Boris sends me. I've written down the name Wim Hof for anybody who wants to do some research. Okay. Since the situation is what it is nowadays with the isolation, can you tell us what can we do on our own? So, or even for free, if there is such a possibility, to improve our negotiation tactics. Most of us have a lot of free time now, and for me, this is definitely something I would love to work on. Hopefully, in your workshop at some point. But what can we do on our own right now to improve our negotiation tactics, other than listening to this webinar?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of things. So first, let's start with free and then progress. I guess that's the
I
most
think
logical
that's a
way in
good way.
Serbia. But free books that I can recommend to you are this, and these are actually like, you know, in school when you go on some course and they tell you these are necessary books. So I would say these are like lectira. How do you say in English lectira?
I don't know. You could say the most important books. I'm
Yeah,
not sure. I will check.
necessary books. If you train with me negotiation, if you go on my course, these are necessary books as a homework. So first is this, and they're all in English. But some of them have in Serbian. First, can you see it? Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. In Serbian, misliti brzo i sporo. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. So he's the guy who got a Nobel Prize for explaining how irrational human beings are, for demonstrating in clinical experiments on real humans how irrational people are and how incapable, literally incapable we are in the crisis negotiation to think clearly. And this is why you cannot be ever effective in negotiating, in leadership, unless you learn how to open people up and stimulate cooperation. So this is first to understand. When I say system 1 and system 2, this is from Daniel Kahneman. He defines this fast subconscious system as system 1 that has saved our lives during hundreds of thousands of hunter and gatherer society. And system 2 is the slow, complex processing frontal cortex system that takes a lot of time and resource, brain resource, to understand the problem. And you cannot use it effectively, and you cannot stimulate people to use system 2 in critical negotiations. You have to drive on system 1 first. Now, how do you do that? These are some of the books that will teach you how to do that. One of those is, I have a lot of books here, Crucial Conversations. So this is one of the most famous books, especially on corporation and business type communication and negotiation. And the single most important book right now in the world on negotiation is Never Split the Difference by the guy that I was mentioning right now, Chris Voss. So Chris Voss was a leading FBI negotiator for 24 years. And after all that experience, he opened a company where now they consult other companies how to be a better negotiators and leaders. And this is his first book. So this was one of the first books that I started learning from. The next one, absolutely necessary, is this, 48 Laws of Power. You are not serious about your personal development, about your business development or your negotiation if you're not reading 48 Laws of Power. And I know many successful lawyers and people like that that say this is their number one go-to book. And also from Robert, I mean, from Robert Greene, any book is tremendous, and because he's dealing with the deep psychology, so laws of human nature, mastery, 48 laws of power, 33 strategies of war, all of these books from Robert Greene are great. Now, especially for the couples, so the negotiation and communication techniques that I'm teaching are literally equally applicable with your loved ones or with your enemies, because like I said, you're learning how to influence any Homo sapiens. So, but this book is specifically great, and me and Jovana have used it a lot. Getting the Love You Want, from Harville Hendricks. Okay. And for me, one of the most influential books on my personal development and my relationships is this. Oh. The Way of the Superior Man.
Okay.
I don't know a single guy who has done such a deep, both academic and spiritual work like David Deida. His PhD and yogin and spiritual leader and stuff like that, but this book really explains the polarity between men and women, and this book has helped me tremendously to stay calm and understand women in these explosive situations that you get into with your loved ones, because we are really different on a fundamental level at some things, and it's great, and there are many biological reasons why nature has made us
different.
Yeah, and it's really important to understand how different we are, and how to not to try to change your woman or to try to change your man, but to try to understand the underlying mechanisms that happen in our brains when we start to fight or disagree about something. So I think those are the necessary books that I would recommend you start from. If you read all of this, you will understand communication and negotiating and people psychology much better, but you still have to practice. You still have to have the courage to practice knowing this. Now, the next thing that you can do, and I highly, highly, highly recommend, I mean, it's so cheap. If you cannot afford my coaching or workshop, go on Masterclass. You know this Masterclass, huge platform, and you have a Chris Voss Masterclass in negotiation. So it is a pre-recorded course, but still you have video demonstrations how he negotiates with professional actors real time, and how he explains these basic negotiation techniques that I also teach people, and that also our police service and anti-terrorist forces also use. So these are open-ended questions, calibrated questions, no-oriented questions, labels, mirrors, accusation audits, emotional anchoring, all these techniques. So it is like, I believe it's $15 if you pay for 1 month, and then you can take this course and go off the masterclass. It's a huge platform, it's a huge business. Somebody invested, I guess, hundreds of millions into it, and they create an incredible stuff. I'm sure you've seen it, but it's incredible. You can take like hundreds of different courses for $15 for a month. It's crazy. Now the next so these are all free or almost free, and then you have coaching with me or my workshops. And maybe it's important to emphasize, because I see people don't understand, I do workshops right now basically every weekend because of Zoom. So, and it's even better through Zoom because we record everything. And my workshops is 7 to 9 hours in 3 parts. And everything I teach, we spar, we practice. So I practice with you, negotiate. And especially if it's one-on-one, then we focus on people's concrete burning problems right now. For example, you have a problem with your boss, and now I'm your boss and I'm teaching you how to negotiate against me. And if it's a small group, we still take personal examples, but of course we have to address the whole group. But then when it's a group, it's interesting because you can see all the other people, how they respond. And it's 3 parts. First part is this, what I've been talking about how to manage your physiology. We do breathing exercises, we do different kind of exercises. We talk about these underlying psychological mechanisms. I give you some visualizations that help me in my critical conversations and so on. So first part is defeating yourself, understanding yourself. And only then you can influence the other person. Then the second part is all these negotiation techniques. Just like Chris Voss, just like any other crisis management teacher will show you. And then the third part is really interesting. The third part is mastering delivery. Now this is a whole new level, because people always ask me, okay, now I explained to you mirror. I explained to you last time. Remember, you tell me, take this cup. I say, cup. You say, yeah. I say, this cup. You say, yeah, take this cup and put it over there. Over there, and so on. But now, if you are not experienced, you say, this cup, and I say, yes. And you like freeze. But then you learn 4 specific, like trained voices that we use, and only those 4 for a certain type of situation. Then you have 2 or 3 different intonations. You have several distinct rhythms that you learn. You have 3 basic communication styles that you have to recognize in other people and train to bring up in yourself. So all this and many other strategies are in this third part, like mastering delivery. So my workshop is, if we do it one-on-one, then it's 300 euros. If we do it in small groups, 2 to 3 people, it's 200 euros per person. So, and we do it online through Zoom right now. So what else? This is basically, I mean, in Serbia, I've seen 1 or 2 guys that do this. You can look it up, try it. I would recommend either myself or you go in Center for Crisis Management. This is how it's called. And this is this guy that was basically like Chris Voss, but in Serbia, leading SAI and MUP negotiator. But as far as I know, he's now into yoga for several years. He's retired and he doesn't do that personally. So I cannot recommend that if he is not doing it. So I think that's all. I mean, it's more than enough to start.
Yes, I think so too. Yes, excellent. Thank you. And now there are a few more questions that we got in the chat box last time. The first one that we got was, if you can explain what is the point or moment during the negotiation when we can either withdraw terms or accept them. Is there such a point?
How am I supposed to answer that?
I don't know. Can we recognize on a person whether they will accept our terms or not at some point? Or do they just say, I accept that?
Yes, but I mean, you have to at least understand how to get to that point, because one thing that you can know is discover to try to fish for things like, that's right. You know, when I tell you that's right, you can see that I had an epiphany. And even when people are arguing with you, they will say maybe not that's right, but they will say that's right or something like that. But if you are practicing being calm, practicing opening them up with open-ended questions, with labeling, with mirroring, and really, you know, being a detective, really curious about their position, then you will see those subtle tells. So I guess one of the points would be that you're first battling with their emotions, with their pathologies, with their position, with their fear, their worry, and you're trying to open them up. And at some point, you will see the transformation in their eyes, in their tone of voice. You will see that their eyes sparkle for a second because you said something that hit a nerve. And that is the point where you can start problem solving, where you can start actually suggesting something, giving a solution, giving an offer. But at what point do you withdraw your offer? I don't even understand what that means. I mean, probably I need some kind of a context, but if you practice really investigating the other people's perspective, then at some point you will see clearly that there is no deal, that there is something objectively that is constraining them from making a deal. But in most cases, people will tell you they have constraints, but they're arbitrary constraints. And sometimes they believe them. They say, I cannot go around this procedure, I will lose my job. But it's not true that he will lose his job. But he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. So then you open him up by asking, what makes you think you will lose your job? And then he says something. And then you say, how will they find another person so fast during this deal? And then he says something, and then you say, mirror, mirror. And then you say, it seems like you are really pressured from your boss. And then he'll say, well, man, you know how it is, blah, blah, blah. And then you start opening them up, and then they start thinking about it, and you keep drilling them and putting them into this funnel where they try to solve your problem, and they will come up with an answer for themselves. How can they maybe ask the boss to go around this procedure? Because now they realized it is something they came up with, not yourself. So I don't know, I hope that kind of answers this question.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's good enough. And it's, it seemed for me, it seems like it's actually, as you compare it to battles and to fighting, it seems like you're actually well, not physically fighting, but fighting their subconscious in order to get them to turn around or something like that. I think it's really impressive.
Yeah.
It's really
yes, and it's
and without realizing it.
Yeah, and there is one really, really important subtle difference between. I was coaching a guy a couple of days ago, and he told me, like, I understand. So you're basically, how did he say? You're not letting yourself be flustered by what they say. And then I told him, it's a subtle difference. You're not trying to fight this feeling. You're really embracing it, but realizing that it is okay to embrace all the hate and negativity that is coming your way, because it was sent your way due to some misinterpretation of yourself. It doesn't have anything to do with what you actually are or what your position is. And when you realize that, then it is not hard, because you don't tense. It's just like in martial arts. When you're an experienced fighter, you are not, but when you don't know how to fight, you're immediately like, but when you're experienced, you're like flowing, and you can see the punches, and time seems to slow down. And this is exactly what happens when you get yourself experienced with this type of negotiation. And just like you said, you see they are struggling with their own mind, but they don't see it. And you're curious, you're interested, you're amused by that, even if he's yelling. And you're like, poor chimpanzee, let's try to help him go back to Homo sapiens for a moment. And you're imagining what kind of pain he must be in to be yelling at me. Who am I? And you know, it really is like you said, but I wouldn't say you're fighting so much with his subconscious. You're helping him. Yeah, you're helping him to come to his senses. Or as Chris Voss said it, I like that statement so much: the art of letting the other person have it your way. That's basically true negotiation.
Yes. It seems to me like it's really about understanding someone, accepting how they're feeling, and guiding them to have it your way, basically.
Yeah, and it's hard. Most people cannot do it because they didn't do this work on themselves, and their ego is really fucking them up, because they feel like they have to stay on guard and have to show their teeth the whole time. But understanding people and having implementing this empathy consciously, tactically, doesn't mean you flatter them or something. You don't. You are just trying to understand their position, honestly, nothing else. Because you know that is the only way to transform their mind. And even if you dominate them and do it by force, you have not transformed their mind, and they will start trying to live on some other occasion. They will undermine you in some hidden way. And we all know that. It happens in relationships, it happens in business. You never win by domination, only for a short period of time.
Yes.
And it brings you much more stress. As I've seen with these Serbian leaders, I'm telling you, whenever they see they have a friend in me, or not maybe a friend, but somebody who finally understands their position, they open up. They start acting like children, even though they're men of 50 years of age.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I do want to go back for the last part of our talk to something you said, and I think this doesn't only apply to negotiation, it applies to literally anything you want to learn, and that is practice. I actually had a rant on Instagram some time ago because people, just like you, people kept asking me about books, about podcasts, about free exercises, about tests, and so on. But it's like they're trying to calm their conscience or something like that. And then it's not enough. Just like it's not enough in English to watch a movie in English or 10 movies in English. It's not enough to read a book in English unless you learn from it. You take out the words that you don't know. You use them in a sentence and so on. And the same thing with this. I actually talked to someone, I don't even remember who it was, but somebody messaged me and they said, I went to the workshop about negotiation with Boris and it's really great, but you know what? You have to work on it later and that sucks. And I was like, well, yeah, what did you expect? For me, it's like getting a roadmap and getting the main advice, techniques, but I mean, it's logical that you can't just pour somebody knowledge into their heads.
I mean, it's exactly the same, like, it's unfortunate. First of all, this practice, we do that, you know, I'm great at this, but I also understand how I could build a bigger business right now, but I don't necessarily do it. Because and then I watch another Gary Vee video, another Tony Robbins video. Why? I just need to start immediately. But we all have our constraints in some areas. But the matter of fact is, you have to train, and it's so easy to train this. It's a shame for the person to tell you that, because I mean, you can go, and many people after my workshop send me emails like they have a Viber group with in their building other neighbors, and you know, they have like a Viber group for neighbors. And the day after my workshop, a guy started arguing about making noise and stuff like that, and this guy that was on my workshop started mirroring him and doing nothing else in the Viber chat. He says, you blah blah blah, and he says, mirror, and then he responds and he says another mirror, and then this guy said, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I overreacted, blah blah blah. And I always tell to people, you don't have to go and immediately negotiate for a bigger salary, for a better marriage or something like that. Go and negotiate with your bartender, with your hairdresser, with anybody on the street, on small things that are not so emotionally driven, and you can practice all the techniques. Get a meal that is not on the menu. Get a coffee which is not ordinary. Get a smile from a person who is, you know, like, you know how the waiters are in Serbia. So you can practice every day with administrative workers, with your employees, with your boss, with your lover. You can practice these techniques always. Oh yeah, and also I forgot to mention, I have this free PDF that I made with accompanying YouTube video, but it's unlisted, only for people who download the PDF, where I basically explain the 3 basic negotiation techniques. Direct cross uppercut of negotiation, which is mirror, label, open-ended questions. Do that, listen to that, try that for free tomorrow, tell me how it went, and if you want to learn deeper. So
okay, how do we sign up for that?
Well, I will send you the link, or maybe I have the link right now. Maybe the best to send you the link
You
in
can send
the...
me all of the links to my
Yeah,
email, and I will just forward it to everybody from the workshop.
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, well, I don't know, this was very enlightening
Thank you. It
and
was my
really
pleasure.
interesting. If anybody else has, I got a message saying with Svekrova, we can practice with, with her as well, I think, with our mothers-in-law. Yes, I
Yeah,
think that could be very interesting experience. I'm
yeah.
gonna try it first. But yes, really nice, and it was very useful. So many free advice and cheap advice as well. I will see you on your workshop soon.
Looking
But
forward to it.
yes, me too. And in the meantime, I just want to thank you for this, for agreeing to see me again at this webinar and to share
Thank you.
even
It
more.
was really my pleasure.
So that is all for today, everybody. Thank you, Boris, and of course you can all expect an email from me with the links that I will get from Boris. All the books that he mentioned are in the chat box, but I will also send them to you in the email, so you have all the resources in one place. There will be a blog post on my website as well, and this recording on YouTube too.
Perfect.
So
Thank you to everybody who's listening, and
yes,
for all the great comments and feedback. So see you some next time.
yes. See you next time, everybody, and bye.